Okay, good evening. Welcome everyone to week 3 of the Shabbat Table Season 2. This week's Parsha is Parshas Chayei. And if you're following along in the Stone Chumash, that's page 106 and 107. The good news is you may have seen in the emails that a big box all the way from Art Scroll Publications came in today with 20 copies of this right here. And for everyone who's participating tomorrow, when you come by, if you're able to come by and pick up your Shabbat dinner, it would be a great honor and privilege for me to give you a chumash so we could do this inside together on Thursday evenings. So that aside, Parshas Chayei picks up right where Parshas Vayera left off. Parshas Vayera, we spoke about the concept of nisayon, the concept of test. And that was with the offering of Isaac, Akedas Yitzchak. And right after Abraham almost brought Isaac, right? And what happened was afterwards, Hashem said, "Oh, hold back, don't go down. Instead, take the ram that was on the side." And Abraham, instead of bringing Isaac as an offering, brought the ram. And that's why, by the way, on Rosh Hashanah, we blow shofar, which comes from a ram, to remember what we call zechus chasdei avos, to tap into the merits and the kindness of our forefathers. And that's why on Rosh Hashanah we blow shofar from the ram's horn. Of course, this past year we only did that on the second day because the first day was Shabbat, and we don't blow shofar on Shabbat. But nevertheless, whenever we can blow shofar, usually both days, but in this year one day, it's because of the ram. That's because Isaac wasn't brought, which was the very end of last week's Parsha. We pick up with Sarah passing away, and the first verse in this week's Parsha, I'm going to read it in Hebrew and translate in English as we go along. Vayu Chayei Sarah mea shana ve'esrim shana ve'sheva shanim shnei Chayei Sarah. And the life of Sarah was 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. Those were the years of Sarah. Okay, so how old was she? 100? Was she 20? Or was she 7? So she was 127. 1 second. If she was 127, why do you have to say 120 and 7? Just say 127, right? So actually, Rashi is bothered by this question. Rashi asks, why couldn't it just say 127 straight? So Rashi comments the following. I'm going to read it and translate as we go. Lekach nechtav shana b'chol klal uklal. We specifically wanted to mention it, each category in its own, respectively. Why? Lomer lecha, to tell you, there's a lesson to be learned here. Shekol echa nidrash la'atzmo, every single one could be focused and expounded on in its own merit. How so? So Rashi explains. Bas kuf kibas chaf lechet. The 100 years was like the 20 years in regards to sin, which we'll explain in a second. And then ma bas chaf lechata, just like a 20-year-old doesn't have much sin, except for some that I know of, but most 20-year-olds don't have much sin. Shahari ena bas onshin, because they're not punishable by heavenly court, which we'll explain in a sec. Af bas kuf below chet. So too 100 was below chet, was without sin. So the Jewish law is that a person is not liable to be punished for sins from the heavenly court until the age of 20. I know, right? You wish you would have known then you would have cashed in before your 20th birthday. I know. But now that you know this only now, right, it's okay. But nevertheless, jokes aside, so a 19-year-old and down until 20, a person could be punished by civil court in a Jewish court, but from the heavenly court, from the heaven that which like we're judged every Rosh Hashanah. That court we are not punished until we're 20. So what does it mean that Sarah's 100 years were like her 20 years? The answer is because just like by 20 a person is not liable by Jewish court, so too the 100 she was not liable for. She not just liable, she didn't have sins. I'm sorry, she didn't have sins. That's how holy Sarah was. Okay, so then what about the 20 to 7? So Rashi continues. Ubas chov kebas zayin liyofi, and her 20-year-old was like her 20 was like 7 in regards to beauty. In other words, presumably the same concept, just like the beauty of a 7-year-old exists within the child, so too with her, Sarah, it was when she was 20. That's Rashi. But that begs the obvious question. I understand the first part, when it's about 100 to 20, that 100-year-old didn't have as many sins as a 20-year-old because the 20-year-old is not liable to is not going to be liable for heavenly punishments. Fine, that I understand. But the next one's a little harder. That a 20-year-old is like a 7-year-old when it comes to beauty. I don't know. It seems a little interesting. I mean, objectively speaking, I think when people talk about beauty in terms of people, they're not referring to, 7-year-olds. They're thinking of, people much older than that. So what does that mean that it was like a 7-year-old in terms of beauty? So I believe that there's a profound explanation here that the Torah is trying to teach us in regards to beauty. And we live in a secular world where so much is rampant about trying to catch people's attention and trying to lure people into different things. And it's purely external. It's all about trying to catch someone in the moment, to look here, to do that, to do this, whatever it is. And the Torah is telling us that that's external beauty. That's only the outside. It's superficial. Real beauty is the person's inside. The real beauty is a person's pureness. And a 7-year-old has that pureness, right? I'm sure you will all notice after having some conversations with little children, ages 5, 6, 7, 8, they don't have filters. Not that they say foul language. No, sometimes they could be a little too honest. And they could just say things really bluntly, even to their parents sometimes. And when you get a little older, you start, you don't say what we call the quiet part out loud. But children have a certain purity. Children have a certain ability to be straight, to not beat around the bush. There's a certain pureness there. I think that's what the Torah is teaching us when it comes to Sarah's 20 was like her 7. Of course, it's not talking about just physical beauty and attraction. It's talking about the Torah's importance of the beauty of a person's inside being consistent with their outside. You see, in Judaism, we don't negate physicality. We don't negate externalities whatsoever. To the contrary, we embrace them. But we embrace them with the following caveat, that the external has to represent the internal. The two have to be properly in sync together. And of course, that's why when it comes to Shabbat, we try to make sure we have special food for Shabbat. Why? Because Shabbat is holy. So the physical is consistent with the spiritual. The two have to be complementary. They have to be consistent with each other. And same too with a holiday or a simcha, a wedding, a bar mitzvah, a bat mitzvah, whatever it is. Right? We make it a little more special because the physical has to mirror the spiritual. And that's what the Torah is telling us here. When it comes to beauty, people are sometimes way too focused on externalities alone. And this is not to say that externalities are not important, but on their own merit, it's very limited. It has a very, very short shelf life. Because if a person could only focus on the outside, they'll get used to it. But if it's complemented by something internal, which is much more pure, then that thing can last forever. And that's what I believe the Torah is telling us when it equates the 20 to 7. Because the beauty of Sarah was not just physical appearance, even though the Talmud tells us Sarah was one of the most beautiful women ever to live, but it wasn't just merely externalities. It was complemented with herself, her pureness, her selflessness, her caring, and therefore the Torah wanted to equate it to the 7-year-old as well. Okay, so that's the first verse. We ain't done. The next pasuk is that Sarah died, B'Kirias Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham came, Lispod, Lisarav, Livkosa, to eulogize Sarah and to cry for her. So we see something very interesting. First of all, this is the first eulogy and the first time that crying comes up in the Torah, and we see the Torah embraces something that many would have others would have maybe perhaps discounted, and that is the Torah embraces a person's emotional needs for a specific moment. How vulnerable a person could be, the Torah embraces that. We don't say when a person has a tragedy, someone passes away, oh, come on, grow thicker skin and toughen up. No, the Torah recognizes that there is a process, and crying in this circumstance is part of that process. It's very interesting. You find that the laws of a chassan and kala, a bride and a groom that get married, have similarities to a person who's actually sitting shiva, someone who unfortunately had an immediate relative that passed away, that's in the week after the passing and burial. When it comes to a chassan and kala, a bride and a groom, there's the day of that has its very special halacha. Then there's the week of, then there's the month of, and the year of. We call Shana Rishona, the first year of marriage. Similarly, we find by someone who's sitting Shiva that there is the day of. They could be an onain, where they're actually not allowed to do positive mitzvos. They will not make a blessing before eating. They will not put on tefillin or talis that day, etc., until the deceased is buried. There's the day of. Then there's the week of Shiva. Then there's the month we call Shloshim. And then there's the year of the person's in Avelus, where they grow a beard or grow their hair a little longer for a certain period of time, whatever, they say Kaddish, whatever it is. So there are certain similarities. What's the connection? Presumably, they have nothing in common. This guy's celebrating that life just began, and this person's unfortunately mourning that life just ended. So I heard a beautiful thought that connects these two is because both people underwent big life changes. A person's life is changed forever once they're married, hopefully for the good. When a person unfortunately has someone pass away, they have someone who was beloved to them no longer in their life. That's also a big change of life. And the Torah recognizes that sometimes things just take time. There's the day of, the week, the month, and the year. So when the Torah says that Abraham lispod l'sara v'livkosa, that Abraham had to eulogize and to cry for Sarah, it's because the Torah encourages going through the natural process where a person has to recognize their human component and nevertheless embrace it and utilize it to the best of their ability. Okay, so what's next? Next is Abraham has to find a place to bury Sarah. Okay, so what happens? So Abraham goes up and he speaks to the Bnei Ches, the children of Ches, and he tells them that I need to bury my dead. I need to bury my wife, my deceased wife. So they tell him, listen, you have to go. This person, his name is Ephron. Ephron was this person who owns some real estate in the area. He had title on certain things, and Avram. They told Avram they should go to him. So I'm going to read to you verses 5 through 16. I'll just do it in English so you guys could follow along, and you're going to see something very interesting that we're going to point out. So, and the children of Ches answered Abraham. They said to him, hear us, my Lord, you are a prince of God in our midst, in the choicest of our burial places, bury your dead. Any of us will not withhold his burial place from you, from burying your dead. Okay, what's next? Abraham rose and bowed to, show as a certain sign of respect to the members of the council, to the children of Ches. He spoke to them, saying, if it is truly your will to bury my dead from before me, heed me and intercede for me with Ephron, the son of Zohar. So this is the real estate macher named Ephron. And he asked the Bnei Ches, the people of Ches, to help him get to that. Okay, so let him grant me the cave of Machpelah, which, by the way, and he was Ma'aras HaMachpelah, which is in Hebron. And I'm sure many of you have heard of it or even been there. I've been privileged to have been there as well. So the cave of Machpelah, which is on the edge of his field, let him grant it to me for its full price in your midst as an estate for a burial site. So Avram wants to bury Sarah and the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, which, by the way, the Ma'aras HaMachpelah is the burial spot not just for Sarah, but for Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, Sarah and Abraham, Yitzhak and Rivka, Isaac and Rebekah, and Yaakov and Leah and Esav's head, for those keeping score. Rachel, our matriarch Rachel, was not buried in the Ma'aras HaMachpelah. She was buried on the way to Beis Lechem. A whole different discussion we may get into in the coming weeks. Okay, so now in verse 10, Pasuk Yud, Abraham wants to go get this burial spot from Ephron. Okay, now Ephron was sitting in the midst of the children of Ches, and Ephron the Chiti responded to Abraham in the hearing of the children of Ches for all who come to the gate of his city, saying, "No, my lord, I've given you the field, and as for the cave that is in it, I have given you the cave. In the view of the children of my people have I given it to you. Bury your dead." So listen to this guy, right? Imagine, Abraham needs to bury Sarah. He goes to the Bnei Ches. They tell him, you got to talk to Ephron. He goes to Ephron, and before Abraham can even get finished talking, Ephron says, "Oh, it's yours already. And the cave, it's yours. Enjoy. In fact, I relinquished my ownership from it. All yours." Now, Ephron didn't realize that, Abraham was about to offer to pay him. So the verse continues. So Abraham bowed down before he showed respect before the members of the council. He spoke to Ephron. He said to the Ephron in the following of the members of the council, saying, "Rather," he said, quote, "rather, if only you would heed me, I give the price of the field. Accept it from me, that I might bury my dead there." So Abraham says, I'm offering. I want to pay. So Ephron, realizing, this guy was going to pay me money for it, Ephron replied to Abraham, saying, "My lord, heed me, land worth 400 silver shekels between me and you. What is it? Bury your dead." Okay? Abraham heeded Ephron, and Abraham weighed to Ephron the price which he had mentioned in the hearing of children of Ches, 400 silver shekels, a negotiable currency, and he gave it to Ephron. Okay. End of story, for the most part. So, what happened here? Let's just make sure we got the general picture. Abraham went to Ephron, and Ephron said, "It's yours already." Abraham, our forefather, then said, "But I'm going to give you the money of the field." Something turned on in Ephron's head. I can make money off this, this poor person. I mean, poor figuratively, not literally, because Abraham was actually very wealthy, as Hashem promised him in Parshas Lech Lecha, you may remember. But Abraham was in a state of poor mentally, emotionally. So Ephron realized, I can make money off this guy. I was going to give it to him for free, but why not? I should take advantage. So he said the words that will go down in history as, when you hear these words, you got to be careful. He said, "Beini ubencha mahi," between me and you. What's the big deal? 400 zuz. I'll take 400 zuz, right? So that's the equivalent of me going to someone and saying, "Oh, you want this? I want to give this to you." Yeah. And someone says back, "Hillel, I could pay you for it if you want." And I say, "Oh, okay. Between me and you, what's $100,000?" Right? That's exactly what happened here. Ephron says, between me and you, $400,000. He realizes that Avram's in a state of sadness, wealthy person. Let's take advantage. I would have given it to free, but why not? Let me try to, get something out of this guy. And if you look in the Torah, when Abraham gave Ephron the money, Ephron's name appears in the Torah twice. And I want you to, when you have a Chumash, to look, it's on page 108 and verse Tes Zion 16. It's like 9 or so lines down, and page 108. And when you see the word Ephron the first time, this is when, right before Abraham gave him the money, Ephron is spelled Ayin Pei Resh Vav Nun. But 3 words later, Vayishkol Avraham LeEphron, that Abraham gave the money to Ephron, here his name is just spelled Ayin Pei Resh Nun. It's missing the Vav. Here, Ephron's name is missing the Vav. So, of course, Rashi, the great early French commentator from 1040 to 1105, comments on basically all of Torah. Rashi right away picks up on this, and he quotes the Medrash from Bereshis Rabbah by this second mention of Ephron in the verse, Rashi says, Chaser Vav, it's missing a Vav. Why? Why is it missing a Vav? What's the lesson? The first time it said his name, it had a Vav. The second time it had his name, it did not have a Vav. What's that to teach us? So Rashi says, Lefisha Amar Harbe, Va'afilu Ma'at Lo Yasa. Ephron was a big talker. That's what he did. He was all talk, right? And then when it came to, what we call it, what we say in Hebrew, tachlis, when it came to the real thing, out the window. Va'afilu ma'at, even a little bit lo asa, he didn't do. So therefore, the Torah took out that vav. The first time, it was big to hint to his big talk. But when it came to taking, when it came to action, no. The Torah shrunk it, took away the vav. And of course, Chazal, our rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avos, Ethics of Our Fathers, I'm trying to remember exactly the quote in Hebrew. And more ma'at ve'aseh harbe. A person is supposed to speak a little, but do a lot. Ephron was the exact opposite. So if you want to know how to live life, just do the exact reverse of Ephron, right? Speak a little and do a lot. Or as someone once said, don't chase honor, let honor chase you, right? In other words, you don't have to be a big talker. People, if you're really so great, people will realize on their own. You don't need to tell them. And if you need to tell them, maybe it's because you're not so great, right? We know people like that. All they do is they want to tell you how great they are, right? So Ephron, big talker, but va'afilu ma'at, even a little bit lo asa, he did not do. And that's why it's missing the vav. But why specifically the vav of all letters? Maybe, okay, so on a simple level, you could say because the vav, if you know Hebrew grammar and diktuk, you could still spell his name and pronounce it the same without the vav. Okay, is it a coincidence that it's the letter vav? So I want to leave you with the following thought before we close for tonight. A beautiful thought, that it wasn't by accident or coincidence that it's the letter vav. Because we know that every single letter in the Hebrew, in the Aleph Beis, has a numerical value. And it also could correspond to something else. The Hebrew language is a beautiful language. It's called Lashon HaKodesh. It's a holy language. Why is it called holy? So there's different interpretations. The Rambam says, Maimonides' famous commentary says the Hebrew is called Lashon HaKodesh, the holy language, because it doesn't have anything immoral in Hebrew. Torah has no specific words for any sexual activity. Everything is hinted or inferred or gently, delicately, inclined to shed light so you could come to it on your own. In fact, the Hebrew word for physical intimacy is bia, which just means to come close. And the Torah assumes that if you understand the meaning in the context, you could come to it on your own. So the Torah has no specifics. So therefore, says the Rambam, it abstains from that. That's why it's called Lashon HaKodesh, which is interesting because it actually is consistent in Parshas Kedoshim, the Parsha of Kedoshim, when the Torah says that thou shalt be holy, Kedoshim to you, that a person should be holy. So Rashi there comments, what does it mean to be holy? To have what Rashi says, Geder Erva, to have a fence between you and immorality. This thing which is not strictly prohibited, but can lead to immorality, put a fence there. If a person does that is being holy. So there's a certain unique relationship between abstaining from immorality and holiness. The two are basically two sides of one coin. And that's why Lashon HaKodesh, the Hebrew language, is called the holy language. Okay, that's according to the Rambam. There are other commentaries in the Rishonim, but we don't need to get into it today. Going with this Rambam, that means that every single letter in Hebrew, in Lashon HaKodesh, not only has a numerical value, but also has a deeper meaning within it. So we know the first letter is the Aleph. Now, by the way, on Pesach, if we could travel a few months down the road, Pesach, some people say something, a piyut, a prayer, a poem. In Hebrew, it's Echad mi yodea, Echad ani yodea, which means who knows one, I know one. You may have heard of it to a song, which I'm not going to sing for you right now, but whatever it is. So And that goes through all the different things of the different numbers. So what's the first one? Echad. What is the first? What is Echad Aleph? The first, number one refer to? So we say. So it says. It refers to Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father in heaven. Hashem, God, the Almighty, is one. And by the way, that's why every single day when a person says Shema, morning and evening, right, when we cover our eyes, we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God and Hashem is one, right? That's the concept of monotheism, which Judaism is, of course, all about believing in a hierarchy, and that hierarchy is one, which is Hashem. Not only is Hashem one, but we also say Yisrael v'oraisa v'kudsha b'richu chadhu, which in English means that the Jewish people, the Torah, and God are all one. Okay, so one is a very special number. What about two? So two refers to the luchos, as you may have guessed, the tablets that Moshe Rabbeinu brought down on Mount Sinai. Right, many times if a person goes to shul, to synagogue, they'll see on top of the Aron Kodesh, the Ark, you might see two tablets, right? And then on them is written the Aseres Hadibros, which is unfortunately mistranslated as 10 commandments. It's really not 10 commandments. It's really more than 10 commandments. But I don't know, somehow it became known as 10 commandments, maybe because of a movie or something. But it's really 10 statements. Dibros means statement, like dibor or daber. It's 10 statements or utterances, literally, if you want to get like that. But it's really more, I think 13 commandments could be found in the 10 statements. Okay, fine. But nevertheless, getting back to our regular program, 2 refers to the luchos. What about 3? So shlosha, or gimel, 3 refers to the avos, our patriarchs, which of course is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, these parshios. Okay, that's 3. What about 4? So if 3 are the patriarchs, then 4 would be the matriarchs, because we know we had 4 mothers, right? Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. By the way, it's interesting, on Friday night, when a father blesses a child, for a daughter, he says, Yisemech Elokim Kisara Rivka Rachel V'Leah. That a person, you'll see this many times after Kiddush or before Kiddush, a father will bless their children. For a daughter, we bless them to be Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, or Leah. But when it comes to a boy, we don't say the avos. We do not say the patriarchs. We say Ephraim and Menashe, who are the 2 sons of Joseph the righteous one. Interesting. Why is that? So the answer is, if you were to look through the 4 imahos, the 4 matriarchs, they share something in common only with Ephraim and Menashe, the sons of Joseph, but not with the great grandparents and the great great grandparents, which is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What is that they share in common? That they all grew up in homes of idol worshippers. And if you look, Lavan, Besua, all the people, Ephraim and Menashe grew up in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. We know Egypt was one of the lowest places. And therefore, the Torah specifically wanted the father to bench them to be like the righteous people who did not succumb to the influences around them. Abraham may have grown up with idolatry, as his father was an idol worshiper. But Isaac and Jacob, I mean, come on, you don't get a better childhood than that, right? But when it came to the 4 matriarchs and Ephraim and Menashe, they had terrible surroundings. So every Friday night, we bench our children that you should be like Ephraim and Menashe or Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, because you should be strong enough to not give in to your surroundings. I know I'm going to get a little carried away now, but or I should say a little ahead of myself, but we're going to be coming on the Yom Tov, the holiday of Hanukkah. I know it's actually coming up, right? Less than a month away. Actually, exactly a month? Okay, we're getting close. Somewhere in that range, okay? Someone will send me a note in the chat exactly how many days it is. But it's about a month away, and something interesting about the mitzvah of the Yom Tov, the holiday of Hanukkah, we have the mitzvah of lighting the menorah. And lighting the menorah is done either with a candle or with olive oil. Well, what's special about olive oil? Olive oil does not blend in to the water. If you pour in oil to water, gravity would dictate that it go down, but eventually the oil then goes back up. And of course, that's to symbolize the Jewish people did not succumb to the Greeks. The Jewish people did not just give up their values and traditions and blend in. Rather, the Jewish people rose above the surroundings and the influence. And that's why every single Friday night we give that blessing to our children. Okay. All right. Now, after that little commercial, it's less than a month away. Okay, excellent. So now that's 4. What about 5? Right? Let's keeping score over here. So 5, of course, is Chamishe Chumshe Torah, the 5 books of Moses. Okay, right? Which is why Jews. Does anyone know why Jews have big noses? I don't know if you've heard this joke before. Jews have big noses to keep them in the 5 books of Moses. That's answer number 1. Answer number 2 is because the air is free. Okay, jokes aside, that's why Chamishe Chumshe Torah is in reference. That's what corresponds to the number 5 or Hey. What about Vav? So here we go to the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, the 6 books or the 6 compartments of the Mishnah. Now, what is exactly the Mishnah? So sometimes we have to remember that when Hashem gave us the Torah on Mount Sinai, he really gave us 2 Torahs, or I should say he gave us the Torah that's broken into 2 different parts. However, maybe that's the better way to say it. And what is that? There's the Torah Shebichsav, and then there's the Torah Shebal Peh. There's the written law. What is the written law? That's what we read every single week. Parshas Chayei. That's what we read from the Bima. That's the Torah Shebichsav, the written Torah. But there's also the Torah Shebal Peh. What's the Torah Shebal Peh? The oral law. So that's the Mishnah and the Gemara, the Talmud. That's also a Torah, right? Right next to me is this right here, the Art Scroll Gemaras, right? Very, famous set of Sfarims, a famous set of books, right? That's the Torah Shebal Peh, the oral law. Now, why do I need 2 Torahs? One's hard enough, isn't it, right? So what's the answer? So really, one would keep you in the dark. One would totally just throw you off every single time you turn. How so? So I'm going to tell you how. Let's pick one mitzvah out of the 613. All right, there's 613 mitzvahs. Don't worry, they don't all apply to one person unless you're male, female, single, divorced, Israel, and in the diaspora all at once. Okay, so don't worry. They do not all apply to you, but most of them do. But the Torah has 613 commandments, mitzvahs. Some are positive, some are negative, some are to-dos, like honoring parents, giving charity, visiting the sick, sanctifying Shabbat. Some are negative, like don't steal, don't kill, don't be jealous, don't speak evil and deceitful things about others. Those are what we call negative mitzvahs. Okay, not that they're negative, it just means that it's a don't do. Of course, every mitzvah is elevating. Okay, now, I'm going to pick one mitzvah out of the 613. Which one am I going to pick? Hashavas Aveda, Parshas Chayei. What is that? Returning a lost object. So, the kollel is located on 2513 East Main Street. I walk outside and go across the street to CVS to get myself something. And on the sidewalk, I see a football, and it says, I don't know, someone's name. And the Torah therefore obligates me, I have to return it. Okay. What if the football has no name? All right. So straight Torah, Parshas Chayei, Hashev Teshivim La'achicha. If you were to just look at the literal words in Parshas Chayei, it means you have to return the lost object. But what if it doesn't have any symbol on it? Doesn't have your name on it? Or what if, better yet, it says Urban Meyer on it? I don't know. There could be 1,000 footballs with Urban, or 100,000 footballs that he's autographed. I'm supposed to know which one it belongs to. Okay. Or Ryan Day. Or who's the running back who's now playing for Baltimore? J.K. Dobbins, yeah? I heard OSU alumni. I heard he's having a good season in Baltimore, right? What if the football has his signature on it? It's probably not his. He probably obligated. He probably autographed it for someone. I'm obligated to return it. I don't know who to return it to. It has a name on it, but the name's probably not the real person. Okay, I'm gonna take it one step deeper. What if I'm on the sidewalk outside CVS and I find a $20 bill and it has your name on it? Oh, okay. It has your name. All right. You don't autograph money for someone else. Presumably it's yours. Yeah, but you know what? Maybe I don't have to return it to you. Maybe that $20 bill once was yours. Okay? Once. But you were thirsty and you happened to be on Main Street. You walked into CVS, bought yourself a Diet Coke, and the only cash you had was that $20 bill. You give it to the cash register, they give you back 3 5s and some change, and then you go around your day. The next guy needs to buy a Diet Coke, and he doesn't have anything less than 100 or a 50. And the cashier gives him back the 20 with your name on it as change for this person. And then the second guy loses the $20 bill, then I find it. How do I know who was the last one to have it? Or the one whose name is on it is the right person, the last owner who really lost it? You see, I could take one mitzvah and I have no idea when it applies, how it applies, when I'm obligated, when I'm exempt, when I'm obligated, but to what extent am I obligated within being obligated? Do I have to travel across the world, right? I could create 100 variables with one mitzvah, let alone 613 mitzvahs. How do I know when it applies? To whom does it apply? When and how? So for that, we need this. For that, we need the Torah Shabbal Peh. For that, we need the Mishnah and the Gemara, the Talmud, and all the commentaries on the Talmud, and all the commentaries who are explaining the commentaries on the Talmud, all the way till today. So when Vav corresponds to the Shishrei Sidrei Mishnah, think about it for a second. We're going to go deep. Hold on. We're going to go deep for a second. It's going to be beautiful. The Vav doesn't just refer to the second Torah or the second part of the Torah. It refers to taking the Torah and properly implementing it. Taking the Torah and not just reading it, but living it. That's what the Vav is. The Vav is person applying the Torah principles, the Jewish values that they learned in the written law. If that's the case, my friends, maybe that's the deeper meaning between with Ephron losing the Vav. You see, Ephron, he talked a lot. He may have talked righteous things, but when it came to action, how did he live? With the Vav or without the Vav? Did he take Torah values and implement it, or did he leave it behind? The Torah is telling us he left it behind. Our job is to take what we learned and bring it with us wherever we go. Bring that Vav with us, from our homes to our schools, to our jobs, to our synagogues, to anywhere we are. We bring that Vav with us. We bring the Torah values and the commandments and we apply them and implement them. We're not like Ephron. We don't just talk, and then when it comes to action, we're missing. We bring it with us. And the Torah values a person embracing society, because we don't negate spirituality from society. No, we infuse society with our spirituality. And that's what this is all about. So a few thoughts. Let's just remember the things that we discussed. Sarah, 100 to 20 to 7. The Torah's definition on beauty and inner beauty and how the two are complementing each other. The Torah recognizing that Abraham had to be human and to go through the motion. Of course, time could be a great healer, and we have to embrace how human we can be. And lastly, from Ephron, what it means for a person to not live life with that Vav, to not bring the Torah with them. The Torah goes with us wherever we are, whenever we are. We bring those values with us, and we shed light to our friends, to our neighbors, to our communities, our families, and of course, the world at large. So with that, I thank you all for tuning in. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. I hope I can see you tomorrow and give you all the stone chumash. And of course, if you want to look it up, it's on page 108, 9 or 10 lines down. You'll see the first Ephron with the Vav and the second Ephron without the Vav. Have a wonderful night. Thank you all for tuning in.